Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is my review of the 2013 foreign film, We Are the Best. Now, I wouldn't consider this to be one of the best foreign films that I've seen, but it's also not one of the worst. It was interesting. It was nice to get a different perspective on punk rock and also adolescence from a different country and their viewpoint. Uh, in this film in particular, it's a viewpoint of Sweden, so you get a Swedish viewpoint, which I do like to broaden my horizons when it comes to film. So it was worth a watch for that, but it's not something that I would say I would watch again. Now, before I get around to sharing more of my thoughts on the film, I would like to give a special shout out to Volante for requesting this review. And if there's another film, TV show, or topic that you would like to see me discuss in the future, feel free to donate to either my PayPal or to my Patreon. A link to both is in the video description down below, and I will try to get to your request as soon as I possibly can. Now, We Are the Best is directed by Lukas Moodysson. It's also written by Lukas. And Lucas's direction it's all right. There's a lot of handheld camera work in this, which is trying to make things more authentic, more real, more raw. And I think it does add to the film at points. At other points, though, it makes it not really that interesting from a visual standpoint, because a lot of the camera work just starts to blend together after a certain point, and there doesn't really seem like there's a lot with the camera work where it's really that unique or particularly that dynamic. But there are some moments, though, in terms of the framing of the shots, or when it comes to the other ways that the director structures things visually that look nice. There's some shots on a rooftop in particular that's covered in snow that looks pretty good. And it's not just because of the snow and everything, and it's actually the way that he lit the scene and framed everything with the character, like with Bobo, who's one of the lead characters, alone on the roof. And there's some other moments visually that are decent, but it's not really a film that has anything visually that's really that striking. It's not that kind of movie. There's occasional different camera angle, or maybe a pan, or maybe a zoom, but a lot of it's very like I said, handheld camera work, almost documentary like in the way that it's structured and presented from a visual standpoint. So the direction is fine for what the director is trying to do and what the film is trying to be. Uh, you know, since it's based on a graphic novel called Never Good Night by Coco Moodysson, who is Lucas's wife. And speaking of uh, the story, the screenplay by Lucas, it's another coming of age story, but it's from a little bit of a different perspective in terms of it taking place in 1982 in Stockholm, Sweden. So you get a Swedish perspective, and at first it starts centering around these two young girls, these two 13-year-old girls, Bobo and Clara. And they are ostracized by their friend. Well, they don't really have any friends other than themselves, but they're ostracized by other kids at the school and by teachers and other people around them because of their appearance, and also because of the fact that they're into punk rock. So, Clara, for instance, has a mohawk. Bobo is like short hair, and they dress in an androgynous way. And so that winds up leading to them getting a lot of attention, and not in the best way, not in a nice way. And they feel more isolated and more like social outcasts as the story progresses. And they wind up ultimately expressing their frustrations and their angst through music. They wind up getting a hold of a rehearsal room at a local community center because there's a series of circumstances where the band that was practicing there one night, Iron Fist, some a bunch of teenagers who think they're like heavy metal gods, they didn't write their names on the piece of paper to reserve the room. So the two girls take advantage of that opportunity and write their names on there. So rules are rules. So Iron Fist gets kicked out, and Bobo and Clara are able to rehearse in the rehearsal room. But they don't know how to play any instruments. And so they just mess around in there, and they decide that they're going to create a band, and they think that they're the best band ever. And even though they don't know how to play any instruments at all, like with any real ability, Clara's like, I'll play bass, and Bobo's like, I'll play the drums. They eventually befriend this other girl, this Christian girl named Hedvig, after they watch her perform at the talent show that they tried to be able to get a part of, but they missed the deadline, so they couldn't perform. And so they get Hedvig to be a part of their band, and she can actually play guitar and sing. So they wind up having Hedvig teach them how to play and how to, write chords and how to, set up and create songs. Like they had an idea for some lyrics because they didn't like what was going on during PE class one time, and they didn't want to, follow the rules. And so they created this song called Hate the Sport. And it's a punk song because the two girls are into punk. They're into punk rock. And of course, there's this whole different dynamic with the two girls that are into punk rock who aren't like overtly Christian, and then Hedvig, who is Christian. And so there's like a bit of a butting of heads, so to speak, when it comes to ideologies. There's definitely some attempts at like social commentary and stuff like that in this script, but I didn't really feel was that interesting. Maybe it's one of those things where it's lost in translation, or I just can't really necessarily connect with it that much. Because there's a lot of moments where the girls will just say things like, "You're a conservative," or like, I guess conservatives are like the devil in Sweden in 1982. Um, and there's so much about this that it's not particularly that interesting to me. Like the band stuff, they never even come up with a name for the band, and by the end of the movie, they don't even play a full song. They just insult the place that they're performing at because they got insulted and got threatened by the people at Vasteras, which is where the Christmas concert is at, which they're playing their song "Hate the Sport" at. And so they just changed the lyrics to "Hate Vasteras," causing a riot. And then they start acting like they're the best because they're kids, they're immature, and they don't know any better. And you're just like, okay, all right. So they cause a riot saying we hate Vasteras instead of hate the sport. And like, that's it? All this build up for a concert, and it's like barely even a concert at all, and they don't even perform the full song. We never even get to hear the full song that they were working on. So that just kind of felt kind of pointless. Maybe it's not about the song anyway. Maybe it's just about the journey. It's about the friendship that the three girls find with one another. There's also stuff that goes on that's like typical, like bland drama. Like, oh, one of the girls decides to cut Hedvig's hair into a shorter haircut, and Hedvig goes along with it. But then her mother is like pissed off and threatens to uh, um, bring the girls to the police for abuse, but that's not really a thing. And she tries to blackmail the girls into going to church because she's a Christian. It's like, okay, but then they drop that pretty easily and then never really go back to it. A lot of the stuff with the parents is very weak when it comes to the way that the parents are written. They just feel like they're barely even a part of the equation or barely even part of the story. And I think they should have been a part of it a little bit more. Also, it's it's got a lot of stuff with these characters, Bobo, Clara, and Hedvig, where they don't necessarily come across as the most likable characters most of the time. Hedvig is the one that comes across as the most likable to me, but Clara and Bobo are kind of catty and bratty and just not really that likable most of the time. Other than the fact that they're into punk rock, it's like, okay, that's cool. These girls are into punk rock, but like they get drunk at a party when they're underage. They act out. They do all this other stuff. There's this whole back and forth between Claire and Bobo where they steal each other's boyfriend or they think that he's their boyfriend because there's this whole thing where they see an article in the paper about this teen punk band. They call the number that's in there. They actually get a hold of the band who the band is now only down to 2 members. And the reason why they did that is because they were fantasizing about the band members being their boyfriends. And so they called the band members and they go see the band rehearse. And then they even like point out how the song that they did sucks. So it's like, okay, all right. I mean, they're way farther along than you. They can actually play the drums and play the guitar and sing. Like you're just kind of messing around with the guitar and the drums and just making noise. You're not actually making music. Um, and there's this whole drama where Clara was dating this one boy, Elise, was part of the punk rock band, and then Bobo, after Clara basically said that we're not really together or I don't love him. Bobo then decides to try to take Elise, and then of course that causes some conflict between the two girls, and there's a fight at some point when they're on their way to Elise's party later on in the movie. And thankfully though, they don't extend that too long. I'll give the screenwriter credit for that. Squashes that beef pretty quickly through Hedvig, who gets the two girls to get over it and to move past it. And there's a lot of stuff that I can see what they're trying to do. They're trying to set up the parents as being not really a part of their lives, or their parents aren't as close to their kids, or and stuff like that, and trying to establish that sometimes the kids don't really necessarily know better. They think that their life with their parents sucks, but it could be a lot worse. But that's also a message that isn't really super clear throughout the story. It's just another coming of age story. That's really what it is, about 3 teenage girls, or preteen girls who, deal with this typical sort of stuff that 3 preteen girls deal with, boys and other drama and trying to fit in school, and now they decide to form a band. And they ultimately do a concert later, and it's a disaster, and they cause a riot, and now they're true punk rockers, and they think that they're the best. Um, and you're like, okay, I'm cool, good for you, girls. Um, definitely don't drink. That's not a good idea. Um, I probably wouldn't recommend begging for money and then using it all on candy either, which is what happens at some point in this story. It's also it's kinda boring, I have to be honest, because the preteen drama with the 3 girls is just kind of tired, been there, done that stuff, and they don't do a whole lot of different stuff with it other than the fact that it's a foreign film and it takes place in Sweden. You got Swedish actors and actresses, and it's in a different language, but other than that, like, it's still pretty cliched. And then on top of that, the music element is not really that fleshed out. I think it should have been fleshed out more. I think the girls should have actually learned how to play better throughout the movie, not just kind of half-assedly do it. Like they get better as the film goes on, as the story progresses, but they don't get considerably better by any means. And like I said, you don't even hear the full song that they play. Also, another thing that makes it kind of dull is that it's not funny. Like there are some moments where you could have some levity and some comedy, and it never really does that. So I think it's trying to be satirical when it comes to some aspects of Swedish society, and it just goes over my head because of the fact that I don't get it. I don't get the context, and the most I got out of it in terms of like a laugh is maybe one of the parents like being silly with a clarinet, or there was a moment that just made me laugh due to its absurdity, where there's like a dinner guest at one of the Christmas parties for one of the girls, and she's a photographer, and she's talking about how, oh yeah, my latest project, I take photos of people's asses, people's butts. I take photos of butts, young, old. And I'm like, what? Why is your project taking photos of people's butts? Like, really? That's your latest photography project? You're getting paid to take photos of people's asses? What, is this a photographer for chunky asses from The Golden Child? Chunky asses. I mean, really? I just that's honestly the biggest laugh I got out of this. I don't think it was intentional. It was just like, what? You take photos of people's butts? Why? Who is asking for this project? Who is funding this project? Why is this a thing? But, other than moments like that will come out of nowhere, it's just typical preteen coming of age stuff. And there's some punk rock music. That's really it when it comes to to We Are the Best. It really is. Now, the cast, I think, pretty capable, for a cast comprised out of young actresses and young actors. Like Mira Barkhammar as Bobo, Mira Grosin as Clara. The two of them, you buy that they're friends. They definitely do have a connection with one another. Um, they they definitely do come across as genuine outcasts as well, and there's a certain fun that they showcase with their characters, with their you know attitude about life, and just grabbing it by the horns and just doing whatever, just saying screw it. I don't we don't care about the consequences. We're outcasts anyway, so let's at least have fun. And there's something about that I like. And I also like the fact that they have some convictions, like they care about the environment and some of these other sort of things, and that winds up in their lyrics for their song Hate the Sport. And that there are some good moments of nuance of the two actresses. They'll be happy together, but then they'll also be, a little catty, which happens with, girls. Um, the other actress that gets the rest of the screen time is Liv LeMoyne as Hedvig. I thought she was good as well. Definitely, she was in a lot of ways became the leader of the band. She stepped in to to bring the girls together when there's some strife going on. She was the one that was providing some order, but by the end of the movie, she even starts swearing, and so she's starting to break further and further out of the shell that she was in terms of her sheltered Christian life. And so I feel that Liv did a good job playing this sheltered Christian girl who just feels isolated from everybody, just like Bobo and Clara, who then eventually, gets her hair cut and adopts more of the punk lifestyle and attitude. And it's actually for the better because she becomes a much more confident person. And I feel Liv did a good job showcasing that transition for her character. You also have Matthias Wielberg, who plays Roger, Jonathan Salmonson, who plays Elise. The two of them are okay. They're fine. The two punk kids. David Denick is Claire's father. Charlie Falk is Linus. I think David Denick was the one who was like messing around with the flute, with the clarinet or the flute, and he was trying to have some fun. He had some energy that he brought to it. He even was playing his clarinet or his flute at the end credits. Stuff like Charlie Falk as Linus, um, Anne Sophie Ross as Hedwig's mother, Lily Moodysson as Hedwig's sister. The members of Iron Fist. Um, so I mean, the cast is fine. It works well for, you know, the kind of story and the kind of film that it is. So does the cinematography by Ulf Brontas, or the editing by Michal Lechowski. But yeah, I have to be honest. It did drag at points, pacing wise, because I just wasn't as invested in what little bit of a story there is. Oh, it's just another coming of age story about preteen kids who are outcasts and trying to find their place in society. But this time through music, I guess a little. It doesn't seem like it's really through music that much because other than the girl who already knows how to play guitar, it doesn't seem like it really is very definitive that Clara and Bobo have actually learned how to be genuine musicians by the end of everything. Which I think that definitely should have been a heck of a lot clearer. Um, and I mean, by the end of the movie, like they're even like doing some lame thing where they're all just being a public nuisance, hanging out in like a cardboard box at this place that serves burgers and fries, and they're just sitting in the cardboard box and just holding up the line and demanding free food. It's like I guess that is kind of a punk act, but at the same time, it's kind of a dick move. It's not necessarily a move where you're like, yeah, you go, girls. Like, it's more like, you go and get out of here with that foolishness. But yeah, it's just, it's, oh, it's an all right watch for a different perspective on a different time in a different country. And especially if you like punk rock, I think there is definitely something to enjoy about this. You get to hear some Swedish punk, which is cool. I honestly think the soundtrack with the Swedish punk songs is probably one of the best aspects of this movie. Um, and other than, a few performances by some of the cast. So it's one of those things like if it sounds interesting to you from the trailer or from what I'm telling you, then yeah, go ahead and give it a shot. If not, yeah, you could probably skip it and you're not missing anything. But anyway, I don't really have anything else to say about We Are the Best except thanks for watching my review. And until next time, I'll see you later. See ya.